The Redline Narratives Podcast is your go-to for understanding how Boston's infrastructure plans impact all of us. We discuss everything from zoning to community planning, complicated engineering terms, ties to historical redlining and urban renewal, and even the cultural implications of development. It's all about making sense of complex topics and ensuring that you have an informed voice in these changes. We'll be having special guests, city officials, experts, you name it, in order to help us answer the questions so we can make positive changes in our community. So let's lock in and hit these streets. Welcome. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Redline Narratives Podcast. We have an exciting episode for you today here with District 7 Boston City Councilor Tania Fernandez Anderson. Welcome to the show, Madame.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Very excited to be here.
Excellent. We're just so happy for you to be here. A lot of what I am doing in the community, it was very heartening to see that we have city councilors that are working very hard on this issue. And I just felt like, having you on the show would make, a good message to the communities, letting them know that there are people that see and hear them in their full potential and are doing the things in the corridors of power to make it all come together. So yes, today's episode, ladies and gentlemen, is called Development Without Displacement, and that has been the theme of Boston Redline 87, which is the Black History Month event series marking the 87th anniversary of the Boston Redline map, which was issued February 1st, 1938. And this map changed our lives forever. It also coincides with Black History Month, thus the beautiful events. We've been actually, Counselor, we've been actually following the displacement pattern of African Americans, which is about like every 60 or so years from 1850, they were, African Americans were in the New Guinea settlement in the North End. Then they go to the West End, and then around 1900s, 1910, they move from there. They go to the South End and Roxbury, and then with the urban renewal of that area in the 1960s, then they get scattered everywhere, but a good portion of them move to the Dorchester area. And so this little Black History on Black History Month, to take us through how we got here, and we're here 60 years on, and in those 60 years now so basically what it means, the city is growing at a certain rate, and when it grows, the people on the outskirts, usually people of color, they get pushed further and further and further out. So we're here with the rezoning effort, the squares and streets, which is threatening. Well, I wouldn't even say threatening. It's already begun the process. A lot of African Americans moving to Brockton, places further down, so they can find places to afford. So we're very happy that you're going to help us learn more about what the city's doing. Real quick, advertising next week, Saturday, this week, Saturday, oh my gosh. We have our last event of the Boston Redline, which is the Prepare and Repair Symposium, where we're going to have like Reiki, sound healing, acupuncture, and another healing event. And we're going to have a lot of them in one place. And then we're going to advocate for a health center here in Hyde Park. We're going to make sure people understand that even if we're advocating for healthy, good things like a health center, once we invest in our communities, we are setting up potential for greater displacement because of higher value of that property. So, and then we'll be watching the documentary Afro American Academy's Lost Cultural Hubs of Boston, Redline Narratives, like the podcast. And that is kind of documenting a lot of history for Black History Month. So without further ado, we want to go a little bit into the development of displacement. Through my work and work of many others, in fact, I can't even say my work, from the community in part of Hyde Park, Southwest Boston CDC, a lot of neighborhood organizations here in Boston, in Hyde Park, we've been working hard, and the people in Dorchester working hard, people in Rosendale and everywhere else working very hard on how do we keep our communities in place. So, inspired by the January 21st meeting hearing that you and Councilor Mejia and Councilor Worrell sponsored, I looked at the information and I was actually very pleased, but also very alarmed. I was pleased by the fact that so many different groups across Boston are coming across the same issues, right? But we're dealing with it in silos. Like, Dorchester's over there doing that for sale, is doing their thing. Roslyn Coalition is doing their thing. And I said, man, wouldn't it be great if we could all work together as a team, right? And come up with unified demands. Although a lot of politics, a lot of stuff going on within the ranks and histories and stresses, microaggressions. I can't get into all of it, but it's hard to do in the community work. But what I was able to do, I pulled out about 5 concepts, and we recently had a development without displacement meeting last Saturday at the Hyde Park Municipal Building. And we were sharing strategies, because the idea is that we have some skill sets in our group that maybe others don't have. And what does mapping look like? You can see here on the screen, you see like some models. We had an architect in our group actually create a model, right, of what it looks like. Because when the people come to the community and explain the BPDA, that is, they come and unfortunately, I don't think they're doing this like maliciously, but they're speaking in terms that people cannot understand, like you heard in your hearing. So we felt that these are some of the things. So pausing the zoning efforts, we feel that the zoning efforts need to be paused at least until there are anti-displacement policies in place first, so that we can make sure we have people in place, not rush the zoning without that. Then there's community education, which comes in forms of these models that we had, and we had little diagrams. So instead for talking about S1, S2, S3, how about 12 floors, 5 floors, 4 floors, something people can digest. And then set measurable success metrics. I think even there's a clip I have of you discussing that, where what does success look like for outreach? What does success look like for the amount of affordable units? What kind of units? What are the needs of the people in the community? And are you taking a holistic approach or more of a civic approach, where they're coming in, where they come and plan, oh, you need a school, you need a health center, but there's also cultural infrastructure and other things that are needed specific to each community. Then address the affordability crisis. We all understand, well, we've been explaining AMI, very complex. We've been working on how to create like a toolkit of all this information, so people can, in other communities, or leaders of communities, church leaders, whatever, can download some of this stuff. But AMI, HUD, how the big catchment area of AMI reflects so many different people, and not just the communities that are underserved. And then last but not least, ongoing community engagement. This is so important, because I was like, why don't they have like offices in each neighborhood that they're designing, that they can keep an ongoing community engagement, or work with leaders to disseminate the information and not try to disseminate the information directly. That way you can reach people, kind of through networks, and not just try and call people out. So these are some of the things that I got from our work here in Hyde Park and listening to the combined testimony. And before I want to, we get into some of the questions, I just wanted our viewers to see your city councilor in action. All right, so let's watch this. All right.
So I don't think that you can do development without displacement. I do believe, however, that you can mitigate as much as possible. And then that's the balance, that's the struggle here. So one, my constituents have been advocating for a study of impact of transportation and environment, specifically because you are saying that Squares and Streets is essentially an anti-displacement effort to anti-displacement, housing, commercial, environment, as well as transportation. And then the constituents are also saying, if you don't do this, if you don't do this with intention, with transparency and inclusion, then in a grassroots level where you organize people and you slow it down, you are excluding us, therefore displacing us. And so it's actually counterintuitive completely to what you promise. And an evaluation of need. Do we have the numbers of each square, how many affordable housing, to what degree, bedroom size, families? Do we know the need for each area? Have we presented that? If we do, have we presented that to the communities? And then have we done a study for the area in terms of zoning? Yeah, people open as of right? People just open businesses, barbershops, liquor stores, what else do we have? Fast food. We don't have other stuff because our zoning is off. So of course I agree. Of course I think we need to rezone. But then have we done a study of amenities to understand how to create these holistic housing ecosystems in these areas? What amenities does Rosendale Square need in order to complete it, in order to make it holistic? Sorry, just two more?
You look like you about to get into some more, and they like, okay. So no, that I found that to be completely fascinating, especially with the amenity study. Can you tell us a little bit about like, what you have in mind for that?
Yeah, when you look at a place like Roxbury, where, as you pointed out, with redlining, urban renewal, and all sorts of historic racial harms, um, and the impact that it's had in a place like Roxbury, you see where the gaps are. You can visibly look at all of the blight buildings or empty parcels or dents in the neighborhood. Then you have situations like Walgreens shutting down and not improperly notifying neighbors.
Right.
You have businesses that are suffering because of displacement because they can't afford the commercial spaces. And so we continue to propel this sort of gentrification in our neighborhood, as you said, coming down from Charlestown, Beacon Hill, Back Bay, South End, all the way now to Roxbury. And then when you go to hearings, all you hear them say is admitting that they've made mistakes, that historically there have been some racial harms, and that we need to redress them. And so I started thinking about that, and it needed to start with science, evidence-based
Right.
data. And I partnered with resources that I think should be giving back, like universities. And the students in these architectural class started surveying and interviewing and doing focus groups. And so in the last 2 or 3 years, my office has been working with Northeastern University. And I'm very grateful for Professor Song, a brilliant architect and professor who has invested in really looking at what is missing. Why can't a Roxbarian get up, go out of their home and drop off dry cleaning, walk down to their gym, and then go to the juice bar 10 minutes away, all within 15 minutes? Why can't we do that? And so we don't have holistic, and for those who don't use this vernacular, we don't have this sort of like systems of addressing our whole needs as a person in a community in Roxbury. We don't have that in a lot of areas in Mattapan and other parts of Dorchester as well, but specifically Roxbury and Lower Roxbury and Grove Hall, we don't have that. And so we don't have that because once we did, and then the land was taken. Sometimes by way of just, you owed $5,000 in tax, or you owed, and you see examples now of other affluent people who owe $1 million in tax and getting away with it. But then land being taken away for $5,000 or $10,000 in tax, then of
Right.
course, first thing I did is I filed a moratorium to slow down the process of for disposition or acquisition. And it means that we have to look at the harm that we caused. And if there were people directly connected, lineage connected to that land, we needed to look at the family members for first dibs. So we prioritized them in hopefully acquiring the land so that we could
Right.
redress those harms. And so in terms of the spatial mapping idea, we're talking with MIT now to hopefully in their next semester to look at spatial mapping and understanding where do we put amenities in Roxbury in order to create this holistic housing ecosystem. And the city knows what I'm talking about.
Right.
Everybody knows what I'm talking about.
Right.
They always respond with this like, oh, so if we don't use the land in Roxbury to build housing, then where does housing go? And I said this to Mayor Wu about 4 years ago when I met with her, my first meeting with her. I said to her, put it in those office spaces in downtown. Now, at the time, maybe she was thinking of it. At the time, she didn't tell me that that's what she was thinking. But I told her this 4 years ago. I said, I don't care where it goes. It can go up, it can go in other areas, but you cannot concentrate poverty in areas where you know it's going to be, it's going to dampen the economy. We are not going to be able to have small businesses. Small businesses hire the majority of Black and Brown. If Black and Brown people don't have jobs, they can't pay their rent. They get displaced. They know that it's a cyclical, perpetual cycle of gentrification and abuse and oppression and systemic racism, and they are trying, I guess, their best to mitigate it or address it. In my opinion, it's just not prioritized as their top
Right.
thing to do.
Right. Right. No, I mean,
There are ways, Marlon, sorry. There are ways. So, for example, the city is rich. Everybody talks about how we're the fastest in paying our bonds, right? Our bonding rates, AAA bonding rates. We pay our loans in a third of the lifespan of the loan. So, like if we borrow money, right, from investors for 30 years lifespan, we pay it in 10 years. We pay it so fast and so good that we pay it with less percentage. So it's just looking at like where are we spending money and what is being prioritized. Transportation and environment gets last fiscal year almost about $1 billion in investment. Well, what about housing? What about creating affordable commercial home ownership? I created the rent to own program, and I said the city should build stock and it should decrease as restriction so that people can liquidate assets and figure out how to create this generational wealth. There are ways and there are answers. Is there an appetite, political appetite,
right.
to do it?
Right. No, I hear you loud and clear. I also do work with Northeastern. They're my research arm. I have a service learning agreement with the College of Engineering, so I get like students, not this semester, but generally every semester. So I'm very happy to hear that you're taking such a research, data-driven approach. That's very encouraging. What I think, we're like, and I liked also that you talked about the vernacular because we use cultural hubs. And that's kind of the way I approach it. Approach it, I don't know if you know, but I'm half Nigerian and half African American. So I grew up in Nigeria and I've seen communities developed by people that look like me, for people that look like me. And so I kind of look at culture and how we build as kind of one, if you build, and I think there was actually Mr. Councilor Worrell clip where he talks about some data that people of color have larger family homes, larger number of people in their homes. Sorry, so what that means is that if I design a home for 2 to 3 people, I am effectively designing people out of the community. Another thing I want to point out is especially so we need to talk, offline about some of our research, some of the things we're doing and how we're looking at it, because a lot of it also has to do with access. Roxbury has been disconnected from the heart of the city by the moving of the Orange Line. And it is so devastating that one move, which basically, I always use these analogy of how had like Route 66, and it was in the desert and there were towns that are doing well, then they reroute the highway, and then once they reroute the highway, then the community falters, nobody comes to the business. That's what happened to Dudley. And once they moved it, everything downstream between there and Grove Hall all the way down to Mattapan dies out. the white flight takes place because of it. Anyway, there are a lot of different angles to it. I'm very interested because of just all, because it's my personal thing. What brought you personally to, like, what was your personal journey to this, like, say, motivated to focus on anti-displacement affordable housing issues?
I think it's at the crux of all of our issues. When we look at the health of Boston, particularly with lifespan difference between Roxbury and Back Bay, 22 point something years, we talk about, we suffer most from comorbidities, and we suffer most from environmental impacts, and we suffer most from displacement and poverty and all these things. And when you look at the average income or the area median income in Roxbury in comparison, uh, Mattapan is now the poorest, but arguably the poorest, but still Roxbury being the most historically disenfranchised
Right,
neighborhood in Boston. Roxbury is the heart of Boston.
right,
All roads lead to Roxbury.
right,
And so we should be looking at how the heart of the body is functioning, and to do that, to so that when we look at why things happen or why we die sooner, is that our social determinants of health are compromised. And in order for us to support our social determinants of health, then we need a better economy. We need better holistic communities. And so we know then that our real estate is still one of the biggest, revenue drivers, or creation, ways of creating wealth in America at least. And so we have to then talk about how, and then we can look at the past. We look at Black Wall Street. We look at how communities of color thrived in the past. And when you make those comparisons, then you say, okay, well, the problem here, what is it? It's poverty has a direct alignment to systemic racism or oppression, and violence has a direct alignment to that as well.
right.
And so, how do we address it? Oh, the problem is that every 20 or 30 years, we get pushed out and displaced, and you have to start over. And then the people that come in are complacent and complicit in that problem. And so it's not just displacement. And so I started thinking I have to focus on anti-displacement, but it's not just anti-displacement. It's that because we cannot stop the thing from happening, or altogether mitigate 100% this harm, then you have to start holding those who are coming in. If you are going to gentrify and you're becoming a part of a community, or as the kids call it, transplants, if that's the case, that's okay. But how are you holding yourself accountable? How are you responsible
Right,
as
right.
now a part of this community, right? And there are ways that I think people can be held responsible to take part in the community, in a way that they can contribute as opposed to becoming a deficit.
What was it? What are the ways? What you want to share some of those ways? Like, how do you hold somebody accountable for coming in and gentrifying our community? Because I think that's right. That we need to hold. Like, you can't just say, "Okay, we're coming in. Oops, too bad. So sad that you got displaced. Our bad." But anyway, we're gonna continue as as before. How do we hold them accountable?
I can't take credit, or full credit for what I'm about to say, because I started thinking about this after studying more. You hear Malcolm's speeches, but you can't take the full of it until you actually go and sort of like look at what he's saying and what it
Right,
means. Um, and the battle of the bullet does speak to gentrifiers. It does speak to being pushed out and displaced, and especially politically, in terms of us holding them accountable, by any means necessary. So when you look at gentrifiers or people that are coming into a neighborhood, we have to be able to say to them, hey, you got to go to the Hernandez coffee shop. You got to go to, Miss Sally's, soul food. You have to eat at our mom and pops. You have to eat at our bodegas. You have to contribute by using your white dollars and I'm not saying that all gentrifiers are white, but majority, right? That using your white dollars in Black businesses, in brown businesses, and you have to be now a full citizen in that society. But the
Right.
same goes for folks that come in when we tokenize when we tokenize, this sort of like liberal methods of helping people. We say, let's help immigrants, and that's okay. Well, immigrants have to be held accountable too. You can't come into a neighborhood and a community and then be complacent with your green card. You have to become a citizen, because then you cannot vote. And if you can't vote, you are now a deficit. You are not contributing. You're
Mm,
paying your taxes, but
mm,
civically, you're not contributing. And
right.
so it's not just to gentrifiers, it's not just to immigrants, it's everyone has a part in this movement and this change. And as things shift, we have to support small Black and brown businesses. We have to make sure that we are supporting them to keep them here so that they're not displaced. And I think that's a huge contributor to keeping people from getting displaced, housing wise. And then we have to all civically advocate for our environment in ways where we create, again, these holistic communities with amenities that improve our quality of life, that contribute to our children's education, that create this experiential type of learning and living for our children so that we can improve holistically in a better way. We're not evolving. We stay stagnant because we have, again, tokenized types of like policies and blanket policies that it helps us look good on a political front. We say, oh, we're helping, but then we're spending money on stupid stuff just so that we can act like we're helping. But it's really just, and if you go to these meetings, these abutters meetings, they'll say, don't you want, here's a carrot, don't you want affordable housing? And then
Right.
the abutters are like, wait a minute, but please understand, the full context of how this is going to adversely impact me and my family. And nobody's listening,
Right.
because apparently Black people don't know what's good for them, and the liberals have already spoken, right?
Right.
And everybody, I know I can cry harder and louder about your pain than you can. So be quiet, sit down, because I know
Right.
it's good for you.
Right.
And so I think that's why I think about, like, in terms of holding them accountable, it's education, it's contributing to the community, it's not bringing their Starbucks and just
Right. Their view of what equity looks like,
their
which
view of
yeah,
what
which
it
external.
looks like under the guy their agenda and what is good for them under the guise of what equity looks like,
Like right.
because they want Whole Foods, and they want the Starbucks, and they
Right.
want their shops. They want your ethnic foods, but they want it in Whole Foods. They don't
Right.
want your ethnic foods at the Marlin,
Right. Like
pizza,
barbecue,
whatever.
barbecue, Marlon's barbecue. Speaking into
Marlon's barbecue. They don't want it at Marlon's barbecue. They want it
right.
in a little container that says vegan, whatever, at,
Right.
and it's again, it's all good. We can be vegan, we can be healthy, we can do all of that. We can be inclusive, we can do all of that. We could fit all in one. But we Black people and brown people in Boston need an awakening, a rude awakening. And, when things become a little leveled, when things become more transparent, that the current situations in politics, it is what it is. And no more aid, no more all of this stuff, then maybe we say, hey, we need to figure out how to do it differently. And
Right.
because we've been put under situations where we're so afraid of losing our advancement, the tokenism is real.
Right.
The colonizer's version of tokenism, or colonizer's philanthropy, it's ridiculous. And what we do is we are so afraid of, we got a mortgage to pay, or you got this job that you have, and if you lose your job, what happens to your family? And they know that. They know
Right.
that. Black people can't just get a job at the city and be okay with that. They have to be able to say, who's going to be our next mayor? How is that going to be different? And or if it's the same mayor, then how is she going to be different? is she really prioritizing the needs of the most vulnerable in the city? Or is it just a big political self-preservation?
Right. You know what you're saying, because this is what I'm working on specifically. Like, what does a cultural hub look like? Because we're describing like Chinatowns or North Ends, but for I'm advocating hard for Mattapan. Let's change that name on the red line to Little Haiti, and let's get tourism dollars, down there. I
You get it.
asked, yeah, I teach my young people, I have BPS students, and I tell them all the time, have you ever been to a place where there is a cluster of, like Chinatown, of maybe African American specific or Cape Verdean, or like, a cluster? Because the thing is, this communal marketing that happens as Chinatown. When you go to Chinatown, you may not be going just for China, one or two restaurants. You're going to engulf, enjoy the whole atmosphere. So there's these cultural hubs, to me, and what I've been looking at. This is what was destroyed during the urban renewal in Roxbury. That's where Madison Park Technical Vocational's field in the back was the heart of the city, and it was a hub, and that's how you get what you call the holistic, because of just from demands, competition, there's development, there's what I call culturally generated revenue, or I guess in city terms, maybe internally generated revenue of these communities, right? I can design communities to look beautiful, right? But I'll make sure that it's completely residential, because I will not provide enough commercial economic space to create either expensive spaces because of a high point of entry, right? Because it's so little scarcity, right? Or I could just not have it at all and just give bus routes in and out of that location to where the jobs are. So while people are thinking that they're, pushing and tugging and this and that, I take a few routes, I put a few diversions, I, design the city a little with a little tweaks, or don't provide enough space for you to have your central market, so to speak. Every African, South American, any little village, has a central market where the community. If you don't design that for people of color, you have to design for culture. If you don't design for the culture of the people, you're gonna miss the point. And so I'm very, I think that that what you're saying is right on point. And I'm definitely willing to share some of the work we're doing. But I think hitting that cluster is something that I want, I would love to see how we do, because that is how you get equity. It isn't putting one black business in Newberry, one black business in, and all over the place. And then also, how do you protect the community from capitalistic, encroachment? Because the North End doesn't have any fast food, right? Chinatown has like one Dunkin' Donuts that has Chinese letters on it, so I know that's in-house Dunkin' Donuts. But Newberry doesn't have any McDonald's. You see, so and our communities have 2 to 3 more times more fast food than other things. So could you could you maybe just from what I said, how do you think the community can advocate for these hubs? Because I feel like that economic engine might be one of the roads that we need to move forward in this equity push.
Yeah, I really love that you said about connecting the cultural hubs to tourism, because and there's some questions or concerns about further advancing or further encouraging gentrification in this way. But I think that's silly. I think there are ways to mitigate that.
Right.
Um, I do. I think that. Sorry, is that you put the question up for me?
Yeah,
Thank you.
just about how can grassroots movements help shape this housing and policies so that we can have clusters of economic, cultural, economic activity. Because
Yeah,
I feel that is
yeah. Thank you. So I wanted to say, one great idea, and I'm working on that, or I have been working on that in terms of creating, how do we create sites and, do kiosks and do apps and do QR codes and all this stuff where you can go to one site and it's the, Elmer Wright Park, and then it gives you a kiosk, and then you can learn about all the history in that area, the Garrison Trotter area, and then it will take you to the next one and the next one, and then you take electric shuttle bus to Mattapan, Little Haiti, and then you learn all about that,
Right.
right? I want to hear about Tucson.
That sounded so good when it came off your lips. The little Haiti.
Oh, okay, all right. So, all right. So, when and then and then maybe you end up in Beacon Hill where you live, right? Bring your dollars. We want that, right? But we want you to do it in clusters, and we want you to do it in Afrocentric cultural hubs, and we want to make sure that it's intentional in preserving culture, identity, and history,
Right.
right? Because all of that contributes to fighting gentrification or displacement. And so I think that grassroots movements or organizations really need to focus on creating what you started out by saying, coalitions. And I don't mean coalitions, I mean one coalition that maybe monthly everybody comes together to sort of compare the resources and efforts and policies and share best practices to be able to align on common ground and bring it to the mayor, right? I
Right.
do think that the mayor holds. I know that the mayor holds the purse. Politics, and she's not unique to this. Politics preserves and prioritizes numbers, right? So if you're a grassroots organization, nonpartisan or not, you still have a lot of numbers and influence. You can bring your policies to shape the housing policies over there in City Hall by creating this coalition where everybody's talking with each other. For example, if you do case management and I do case management, there should be some sort of, incubator that streamlines it. And I know that it provides me, maybe it's an online site and it provides me with a list of, here are places that gives me case management. Here are cases where you could do on policy, or here's the resources where you could get furniture when you move into your new house or your new
Right.
apartment. Um, there's nothing like that. Remember, Boston.net used to do that, and then somehow, I don't know if it was Marty or who got rid of it. But when it went away, it was such a huge asset to the community, to Boston, where everything was being put in one place, but people were getting too organized and people were communicating. And so I do think
Can't
that there.
have that. We can't have that. We can't have
No,
that.
no, we cannot have that. I do think that there's a need for us to come together in terms of, looking at our common grounds and working on policies to fight housing. But I also think that there's a need for us to compare resources and figure out how we not reinventing wheels or doubling up. So everybody's competing with each other, and then you have like, someone knocking on your door, like, or by door I mean email to electeds. My nonprofit needs funding, can you please help me with this? And you're like, sure, I would love to, but also there are all these other nonprofits that get way more attention, that knows more about lobbying, that gets more, ways of advertising and marketing themselves because of resources and connections. So Boston becomes this place where if you are a grassroots movement or organization, you're only as good as your connection. You're only as good as, who you know, and how much you're willing to be tokenized. And it is a fact. It's the truth. Like, you look at the people that are getting grants and funding and stuff like that. Unfortunately, it's the people that have access to the resource. And how did they get access to resource? Well, they knew somebody that knew somebody, and then
Right.
somehow they got this legacy business or space grant or whatever. um, there has to be a better way where we are more accessible to people that don't have the access, um, the more disenfranchised people, and there has to be a way where we can come together. So, by the way, I'm going to invite you to a movement that is happening in Boston, where they're creating a coalition for all of Boston. So it's pretty
No, no, no.
exciting.
We'll gladly come. I'll gladly come. I'm going to gladly share it with my community. That's what we did on Saturday. Actually, like we were trying to so we were coming up with like a toolkit, of like. But we're going to need resources to duplicate it. But we'll have a template. So like those models, right? They are extremely effective in getting people because they're physically touching. An architect help us make it to scale, and it is so vital. I
Tell
take
me
pride.
about tell me about the model, exactly what it does.
Right. Let me. It is a. So the model is a like we take aerial photos and print them of the. Let me just try to pop it up here because I know I had a picture of it just to give a little more context. So it's a little small there, but on the top left hand side, what it is they are wooden blocks.
Oh, wow.
Right, they're wooden blocks on top of a picture of the area. Then each block is, to scale, like whether it's like an existing or it is S1, S2, S3, S4, S5, right? So then when we put them on there, it's like for the mapping exercise to help our community go, oh, this is what this, is this, how does this look if this is there? And then and now, when we're actually having another one, well, not me per se, but the group that I work with, Development Without Displacement of CI of the community in Port of High Park, on March 15th at the I think is at the Pride or is it at the Muni? I'll share that information with you, and it's so that we can start getting this is what the community wants, right? And then it's very clear. Everybody, at least as much as we have, if you've seen the Rosendale Small Area Square plan, they have up to 12 floors on the in the middle of that, like by the MPTA commuter lot in Rosendale, right? That just that alone is called a placemaker. That's what they call it. Is going to offset all. Everybody's like a wave. Everybody should just carry the wave and and surf their way out because if that's what it means, if that plan comes in place, they're putting commercial all the way down Washington from there to the Forest Hills, and that is going to if you have commercial on the bottom floor, that's everybody to the left and right effectively just get your bags ready because it's going to make sure because they're trying to make that Forest Hills to Rosendale Square like a main economic, which makes sense, right? But if you don't have protections in place, it's going to cause. So that's what the model does. It just helps people visualize it. And then, of course, we have materials on AMI. So these 5 issues that I talked about, we have like materials that we're trying to develop and, streamline, make simpler, turn into flyers. Efforts like what we're doing now is going to be clipped. We have to meet people where they are. They're going to working, 2, 3 jobs, to try and stay in place. They don't have time, so maybe we have to get on their phone and compete with, Twitter and all these other things that are going on out there, just so that you may be able to get some of that information, in the hands of people trying to energize young people as well. So we're like, me, I'm the research development. Like, how do we work to create for us, by us solutions, that are community driven. But even one of the things that we face even in my group is that I'm probably the youngest and the darkest of the people that I work with that are working
Yeah.
very hard for the community, which is fine. But I would like to, it's like I don't want to be like the canary in the coal mine where I'm the only person here screaming, as if no, and all the people are so busy with their daily lives that they're not engaged, not able to digest the information. So I think it was Councilor Durkin said that they're not interested, or kind of an assertion to that extent, and that's not true. That's not true at all. I was very offended, and I actually said it during.
Oh, wow, you were listening. Yes. I love that you have this visual model because manifestation starts with a vision, and to be able to conceptualize it physically and say, oh, this is possible, look at this, is beautiful. I think that, beyond that, putting together, working on the policy side and then working on the tools, specifically when you start talking about, like, what is the formula? How do we get there on a grassroots level, is super important. And I don't think that it's the approach for most civic organizations. If you come to civic leaders, civic association and groups, and you say, listen, I have a toolkit for you, look at this, look at how it's possible, and look at this toolkit that we have for you, and all you have to do is follow this, and you will be able to organize yourself, but also the work in the policy. And so I really love that. Now, in terms of, like, yeah, that was really offensive, and I think that, just to be honest, like, not just to be honest, I try the most as possible. Sometimes I filter a tiny little bit and I suck at it. Um,
Right,
but I think that Counselor Durkin, like all of us, is human, and
right,
that was definitely a mistake on her part.
right,
She should have not said it that way. But I think sometimes when you get emotional, and she loves the mayor, she believes in the mayor, and she will wholeheartedly defend the mayor, and she means well, but when that emotional, reactionary type of disposition that she has, she may say something impulsively and may hurt herself or offend people.
right.
So I think we can forgive that. I think
Yeah,
that if
I
you
didn't
talk
think she
to
even
her,
did it on purpose.
yeah, I
I
think
think
if you talk to her and you educate her, if you educate her, or if it's a lack of education, she'll be open to self-correcting, as long as she can still defend the mayor, because she loves that woman to death. Like, honestly.
I understand, but I mean, I think to say that is not anyway. I think if I don't think she did it intentionally, but I also think that's also chilling because it means that that's the natural narrative that is
No,
operating.
it was a little ignorant. It was a little ignorant, and ignorance is not like evil, is it?
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, that's what I'm
Right?
saying.
So
I
yeah,
don't.
that's what I'm saying. Like
I don't think
she's
she didn't know. You know.
no, she's a sweetheart. I think she's just that I think in that statement, that was ignorance.
Right, right, right. But I don't think she was like trying to be evil or anything. Yeah. No, I think this is great. Let's see. I want to okay, but the one thing, one little addition. So like things like the model, things like, the educational materials, the flyers, and even organizing, you need snacks, you need this and that. I am, we're thinking of, as part of this toolkit, hopefully get some, fundraising going
Mhm.
because at the end of the day, we do need resources to have the monthly meeting. I think that's a great idea. We're thinking about going to different city, different parts of the city and hopefully partnering with other groups to share the same displays that we
Are
did.
you guys working with Main Streets?
Well, Hyde Park Main Street is part of our Main Street, but we haven't finished the toolkit because like a process, like right, we wanted to get community input first on this, on those 5 points, right, before we say that, people say you're coming up with your own, how people get like, like no, we really,
Look, the Rosendale, what is it? Franklin Park Defenders. They cared so much about, the trees and preserving this location, that they had people willing to fundraise and create the budget that was going to replace whatever the mayor was going to do with the developers. And
right,
so what that says is that, where there's a will, there's a way. And if you maybe, I mean, I'm sure you have your own ideas, but
yeah.
maybe that partnership with Main Streets is important if you don't have a fiscal agent, but I wish you all the best
No,
as well.
I'm my own nonprofit. Like I'm like
Okay, yeah.
a 501(c)(3). So no, it's not about that. It's just about like trying to get people's mind around the fact that it's as a like so I'm having a whole development without displacement like wing, right? That I'm trying to organize. I'm a project manager by training. So what I'm trying to do is just okay, how do we apply that knowledge to make sure that we get a sustainable system because if it doesn't work, it don't work. It need to work. So that means that we need finances we need to pay people part-time to help us with the organizing. We need a whole bunch of stuff. So what I was just saying was that, like, any resources or things like that, we definitely want to be
If I
part of.
hear if I hear of anything, and I'm thinking about a couple that I can email you. So full transparency, it's all going to be out in the open, and you know exactly. I think there's a nonprofit that does community mitigation funds there in Roxbury, but I think you could do the same for Rosendale when it comes to development or mitigating
Oh, I'm
community
in
benefits.
Hyde Park.
Oh, Hyde Park rather. I think you could do the same there. And then there's ideas like DIFs in terms of uh, creating cultural hubs. Have you heard of DIFs? Okay, so anyway, these are like incremental financing that comes from development in your area that should contribute to cultural hubs. It's a state bill already. It's already passed. It's just something that the city has to adopt for specifically for like a catchment area that that the community decides. So I'm happy to share information with you.
Yeah, they don't want me to get a hold of that information. I'm gonna tell everybody. So I appreciate you.
I
Uh,
think Council Pippen had filed it after I had already like filed and held a hearing on it, and I was like, "I'll leave you alone. You file it." But I'm not sure if he was filing it specifically for Rosendale or Mattapan, or was it like all of his district. But you should talk to him for sure. And then I would say, let me send you all the information that I have on diffs from the state,
yeah.
and I can ask the person that does the Roxbury diff if she's be interested in teaching you a little bit about it as well.
Appreciate you. Oh my God, what a great note to end on. I am so grateful for this conversation. In fact, my brain is bubbling, girl. My brain is like trying to think of what to ask and everything. So we just have to continue this offline. You're not going to be privy to that audience, but I'm so appreciative to Boston City Council District 7, Tania Fernandez Anderson, for taking the time out of her very busy day to come and talk to us here on the Redline Narratives podcast. So, anything you want to share, before, just for the audience?
I think you're great. I think what you're doing here is amazing, educating the public, but also, the interaction of creating this space where you can say, look, this is what we're working on, but let's continue to have these conversations because being fluid and be able to not just comprehend it for myself, but be able to convey it to the public is important, right? Sharing is caring. And
Right,
it's incumbent upon us to share when we have information, but also the fact that you are thinking practically on like this architectural level of how to create this toolkit. I'm fascinated by that. I would just leave you with, if you like for me, because I have a nag for observing information and being able to mediate in between audiences. So I'm able to like take all sides and consolidate and then deliver it in a different way that people
right.
can understand it or that people can digest it. So if you are, at least I've been told many times, and if you are interested in me, when you educate me on your toolkit, if you ever want me to like co-facilitate one of your community meetings, I'm happy to like join.
Yes, yes. If we do one in Roxbury, then like somewhere in your district, that would be a good way of getting, people engaged, so
Yeah,
that,
no, I have a platform. We have a advisory council. It's basically all the civic leaders in D7 that comes together every Saturday. And they're now forming this big Boston coalition thing. So
okay.
I think you should be a part of it. I'm going to connect you,
Thank
and I'd
you.
love you to present to them.
Right, Hyde Park and everybody thanks you. So have a great rest of your day, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll see you later on the Red Light Narrative. Thank you,
Thank
Tanya.
you. Peace and